Alrighty. I would like to remind Aimers, if they're studying during chapel, it's an automatic 0. So if you are studying, I would close your notebooks. Charles is at the dentist this morning, and so he asked me to kind of guide what we're going to do this morning. And so we're going to do something a little different this morning. We're going to have a panel. And so I'm going to ask those who are going to be participating in the panel to just come up and get in one of these seats here. But we have Chris and Barb Smith, Dennis Wilson, Speedy and Nancy Hart, Janet Brumfield, and Ray Young. Now, all these guys, they're going to tell 3 truths in a... No, I'm just joking. We're not going to do that. And then, this is why Charles doesn't ask me to come up here, or probably will never do it again. And I'd said that since Charles is gone, then we could have a panel about dress code and ask everybody how they feel about being in these jeans this week. Amen? Amen? No. No. Everybody sitting up here, they all have one thing in common, or more, but the one we're going to talk about is the very thing they have in common, is every person here has had a child or more that has gone through the AIM program. And so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to have a panel just to ask them questions, and you might ask, well, why are we doing this? And I think the reason we're doing this is many of you have kids that are here, and you may be processing if going through SIBI, the School of Preaching, has been a blessing for you. Is just what if there was something that filtered our kids through that in a healthy way if they had a desire to do ministry? And so what we're going to do, just so that that's on your radar as your kids are growing and they may begin to talk about ministry and just see that as an avenue that they could go through and go spend time on the mission field and work as apprentice missionaries and then come back and then go through the 2-year program and then through advanced missions and be preaching in different congregations or be missionaries around the world. But we're doing this morning just to ask questions, to think, okay, well, what was it like for these that are up here this morning? What was it like as they process these different things? And so I have a mic over here. We'll see if it's on. You want to see if it's on? And then I'm just going to move up here. And I'm going to sit here and ask the questions. It is now. Can you hear me now? This is a Verizon mic. Sorry. No, some of you guys got that. So I'm going to begin. And what we'll do, we're not going to have every person answer every question just because we would be here all day. Because I have 70 questions on this. I'm just joking. Just joking. But we'll let Speedy answer this first question. He was just smiling all big, and so we'll let him answer this first. How did you and your child process the desire to be an AIM?
Well, I was preaching in Roby, Texas at the time, and actually we had an AIM group come visit one weekend to the congregation, and of course, after they left, he wrote a letter to God from Bo, and in that letter, he said he wanted to go to the AIM program when he finished high school. So, of course, being a Sunset graduate, we were very thrilled with that idea, and we tried to encourage him in that direction as much as we could from the time we found out he was eager to do so. And so I still have that letter. I was hoping to bring it this morning, but I didn't find it in my secret hiding place of those memories. But it was very exciting for us. And, of course, we prayed about it and talked about it often, and he kept his focus on coming to AIM. And so when we had just, Nancy and I had just accepted a work here at Sunset, and so the day he graduated, the day he graduated from high school, the very next day we moved to Lubbock to begin our work here, and then he came to AIM that following August.
Okay, and how did Bo hear about AIM?
Well, I'm not sure how he heard about it the very first time. Probably when we were here, of course, as a family, going through the school. He was young, but I'm sure he, had heard a lot of talk about the young kids and missions and going to the church here to Bible class and things of that nature. So he was kind of raised up hearing about the School of Preaching and the AIM program. But the real, I think, time that he was influenced is when the group came, and they just made such an impression on him that it stuck in his mind, and that's what he wanted to be a part of.
All right, good.
So that's pretty cool.
Okay, we'll let Janet field this next question. What were some, if any, were your concerns when your child said, "I want to go into the AIM program"?
My baby girl's going away. I really didn't have a lot of concerns. I think most of it was like, is my daughter ready to go out on her own? She had always lived at home. She was fresh out of high school. And it's always, I think, hard for moms and dads to see their child go off for the first time. Even though she was still here in Lubbock, it was still hard to do that, to watch her do that. But it's just mostly that, just, is she ready? Am I ready? But I also just, knew that God was going to take care of whatever came her way.
Okay. And we'll let Dennis do this next one. In what ways did you see or have you seen your child grow from their AIM experience?
Well, I've seen my kids grow a lot. I've had 3 go through. Valerie was a couple years ago, Rex last year, who's in Honduras, and Abby this year. And so I'm just seeing them grow like crazy. I think one of the most exciting things was having Rex mail me his sermon. He preached his first sermon in Spanish here a few weeks ago, and so that was pretty amazing to listen to that. But I've just seen them grow in leaps and bounds and becoming even stronger and better than I am in doing these things, at reaching out to people and teaching people, and so it's pretty amazing.
Okay, and on the flip side of that, in what ways did you see them struggle?
Well, just going through culture shock and different things like that they're going through. So I get the phone calls when they're feeling the culture shock, and having lived on the mission field, you kind of know what they're going through, and so you can empathize with what they're struggling with, but at the same time, you're able to say, hey, you realize this is just something you're going through, and you're going to have to work through it, and it'll pass. And so I think those were the toughest things when they're hurting and they're sad, and you, as a parent, you want to say, well, let me protect you, and at the same time, you got to say, you got to go through this, you got to work through this. It's natural. So,
okay. And Ray, we'll pass it down. We'll just keep the mic moving this way. In what ways has their AIM experience shaped what they're doing today?
Well, Caitlin came through AIM, started 4 years ago, and she's back from Port Elizabeth and working as an AIM assistant. And so she's having that direct shaping as continuing to give what she's received, but also as she's preparing for a career, it's shaped kind of the lens which she's using to decide what she wants to do and with the rest of her life. And it's not about the career or the money. It's about how can I serve other people and be a blessing. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that's carried on is she loves the Lord and she loves the church and she wants to be a servant.
Okay. And we'll let Nancy answer that question also.
What was the question again?
Okay. In what ways has the AIM experience shaped what Bo's doing today?
Well, I think when you go through something like that, it's all about who they are as an adult. For Bo, it was wonderful because he was raised in a small town. There were only 11 people in his graduating class. Very sheltered, preacher's son, and to go to another part of the world and work with people over there. And it wasn't always easy. Sometimes he'd call home and complain, and we'd say, that's a learning lesson. My kids hated to hear that's a learning lesson. but I think it matured him a lot. I think the struggles were really good. And Bo actually went through twice. Went through the first year, and he really struggled. He'd lost his grandparents, and he got depressed, and he really wasn't ready to go on the field. And so we were ready for him to go to college because we thought, you've tried AIM, but he came back a second year. And I think he had a good team, and I think that he had a mentor, a man who had been in the Spanish program here, Clarence Ekman, and he was like a grandfather to Bo. Well, I wouldn't trade the wisdom that he got sitting at that man's feet, and they just hit it off. So I think Bo's the guy he is today because of going through AIM. And he married an Aimer, and they're very proud of their AIM experiences. I mean, that's what they're all about. That just carved the rest of their lives. So we love it.
Good. Okay, we'll let Chris and Barb field this next question. Did everything work out on your child's mission field as they hoped and dreamed?
Yeah, no. I'd say with Amy, she went to Albania with some of her best buddies, and they had some pretty serious team problems, as well as I think the place where they went had some real challenges, and so the end result of all that was, I think what she thought was going to be like the dream team place, we had to move them after about 9 months because it just wasn't healthy, and then so when the dust settled, she was the only girl left. The other ones went home, and with 2 boys, 2 AIM guys, and we moved them to New Zealand. And I think there was a different, like night and day difference between the cultures and between the style of work to styles of the missionaries. I mean, just so much difference. But I think she learned, even as rugged as that was, she learned a lot of lessons. And I think, Logan in South Africa, I think, had some challenges too there, just with church was going through some things that I think the Aimer struggled with, and so there were tough things, and it is tough to be on the other side of the world, hearing about these things, knowing, through emails or their communication, that they don't know what to do, or they want, thinking about it. Maybe should I even be here? Should I, what's the best thing to do? And to not just be there, to give them the good advice or hug them or things like that. That's tough. But I do think that they today can look back at that, even though things didn't turn out. I think it has kind of matured them a little bit. I think it's probably made them a little wiser in working with people is just kind of that way. And now both of them are, currently or dream about staying in ministry. And I think that kind of prepared them for a little bit of, it's going to be, you're going to have to deal with some of that if you're going to be in ministry. So I think it made them a little more realistic for that.
Amy had a unique situation, and I think one of her struggles was sometimes as the director he has to make decisions or be a little more merciful than he tends to think that he is. Aimers on the field can get angry at the director of the AIM program, but she was a little bitter and a little angry towards the director of AIM, and just happened to be her dad. So, that was a little interesting. Did y'all forget about that? But anyway, it was, I say that just because sometimes Aimers or parents might have issues with the director of AIM. And, it happened in our own family. It happened in our own children's experience. So it's all good now.
Okay. And go ahead and keep the mic. I'm going to let several family units field this next question. But coming back from the field, you always hear the words reentry. And what was that like? And describe a little bit, what was reentry like for your child? How did they struggle? And how did they come out of that, or did they come out of that struggle of reentry?
I don't remember them struggling any more than most. Both of them had beautiful places on their field. I think it was a struggle of coming back to Lubbock, Texas. And I think that might have been a lot of it, but I don't know if this is part of your question, but I honestly feel like Lubbock is the best place to come back to after AIM. And as an assistant, or even just being here, because there are so many people here that have gone through it and can help them get through that. And I think you can even ask a lot of the ex-AIMers that are still here that did not go the assistant route. I hope they would also say the same thing. So I think that helps. I'm putting a plug in here. I think that helps to come back through Lubbock after your AIM time, just to kind of buffer that reentry and all the struggles that go with it.
Okay. Did you have anything you want to add? Okay. We'll let Speedy and Nancy field that. Just coming back, the reentry process, what was that like? And we'll go from there.
Well, I think Bo, those of you who know who Bo is, you AIMers, the new AIMers now wouldn't know him, but Bo just kind of enjoys life wherever he's at. I don't remember any huge cultural shock. Of course, he was in England, Nottingham, England, and coming home to Lubbock from there is just a shock in itself, like you were saying, just the landscape and other things. He enjoyed developing somewhat of an English accent, and I think he used some of that on purpose just to be kind of funny. But I don't remember him having any real big struggles when he came back. He wasn't sure what he was wanting to do, but then he was an AIM assistant for a while, and then followed up moving to California for a while. So I don't remember any, so I'll let Nancy speak. She may remember some things I don't.
Now you want to hear Mama's viewpoint?
Yes, we want the mama's viewpoint.
I think reentry's harder than culture shock, honestly, because they know they're going to a new culture. They know they're going to learn new things. They're really excited about it. But things happen in the 2 years or the year and a half that they're gone. And when they come home, Mom and Dad aren't the same. They may have even moved, and their friends have moved on. I think Bo did have a little bit of, when he came off the field, what do I do now? And I think what happens with AIMers, and this is not bad, sometime in their life they're going to go through it, but when you get out of high school, you have that. Am I going to go to college? Well, when you know you're going into AIM, for them, they already have that direction. So they really don't go through that first, what am I going to do with my life until they get back from the field. Well, by then, a lot of the friends that didn't go to AIM that they left behind already settled. And I do think they have to find their niche. And I think coming back and serving as an AIM assistant is one of the best things they can do because they give back to the program. And I think that helped Bo more than anything, was being an AIM assistant and going to these little towns. He just loved that. And so I think he had a little bit, and I think it was a little bit more than the culture shock he had over there. But I think if you have loving parents, and we have such a great reentry program, we're here for them. And I think they can get through it. But I think they do have a little bit, but I think it's inevitable. They have it when they get out of high school, sometimes even out of college. It's like you may have a degree, but you may not have a job right away. So anyway.
Janet?
Well, I was really surprised that Melissa did have reentry problems, especially since we had lived in Brazil. She was born in Brazil, and she was 10 years old when we moved back to Lubbock. And so I thought, well, with her being in Brazil, she had already gone through the experience, and it would be, fairly easy. But she really had a struggle when she came back after her AIM time in Brazil. She had a struggle with all the material possessions that people had. After living in a third world country where a lot of people that they worked with just had the basic things, a bed, a refrigerator, and some may not even have a refrigerator, a stove, just basic things that they struggle to work day by day just to buy food. And then you come here, and so many people have so many things, 2 or 3 cars, knickknacks, and I'm guilty of it too. So I imagine I added to her struggle. She came home and wanted to get rid of everything in her bedroom, and I had to sneak back behind her and take some things that I knew that she would later wish that she had, and she did. A few years later, she's glad that I did save some of the things I did. So she had a hard time with that, struggling with the materialism of people. She did struggle coming back, even though she was here at Sunset. She struggled with the church here because being in a small congregation where she knew everyone and everyone was everyone, but a lot of people were involved. She was so involved in the church, helping with Bible studies, and to come here and see that so many people, she felt like just sitting in the pews just okay, I did Sunday, I was here Sunday worship, marking that off and not being really involved. That was very hard for her to see that, that people were just here to say that they were here. And also, she even struggled, and I'm going to be honest here, she even struggled. I don't even know if people need to go through AIM because of her struggles. I mean, she's different now. She does see that it was a really good experience. She had a lot of good experiences with it, but it was a very hard time for her to come back. And she's doing great now. Her and her husband did some mission work in Brazil, and they're in Oklahoma now doing he's a minister there, and she's very involved in the church there. So, but it took time for her to reacclimate to living here in the States.
Well, Valerie is the only one that's come back off the field, so she's struggling. She's struggling with, you go from every day of your life is about church work and working with people and things like that. She felt like her time was not enough in Mexico, and every time I talked to her, so, well, I need to go back to Mexico. Well, I miss it. She came back, was here for 2 weeks, then went to North Carolina and is working like a nanny there for a little deaf girl that we had in our orphanage in Mexico. She's around people that are not as church oriented. I mean, they go to church, but they're not doing church things every day and reaching out to people and doing things like that. And so she feels like she's just empty right now and struggling with some of those things. And so it's a little bit of a struggle when you hear them say, well, yeah, I got to come home, but I don't want to come home. And I'm like, well, we still love you. We still care about you, And so, but they kind of go through that. But I still think it's the best thing for them.
Go ahead, Ray.
I'm getting talking points from my kids right now who are in the audience. So I think part of what shaped our girls to even have the desire is, they had an uncle and aunt who went through AIM. Basically, all their lives they had AIMers around as area church and people coming. And so there was those kind of things. Coming home, for Caitlin, she was ready to come home until it was time to come home, and then she didn't want to leave home. And I think part of the struggle for her was coming back from a lot of structure and engagement in ministry every day, and at the outset of every week, this is what I'm going to do. Now stuff comes up, and you add that in. When she was there and then come home, part of it I think was good. She came home, and we were at camp, directing camp, and so there was an opportunity for engagement immediately. And I think that's really important is you've got to have the drive to say, I've got to create my own ministry opportunities wherever I am. And that's a challenge because you're used to the structure and somebody else kind of saying, okay, here's some set things you do and fill in the rest to fill in the rest. The other thing that I think was really hard was I know it frustrated Caitlin. People would say, well, how was your trip? As if she'd, gone for a week or two. And then, so they didn't understand that, I moved and my life was invested there. And so that made culture shock, I think, difficult, is people not understanding. And then she appreciated people asking, but too often they'd say, how was your trip? And as she's trying to answer about her life, they would say, well, glad you're back, and walk off. And so I think that was difficult, people not understanding and not really getting to share her experience that had shaped her to be who she is now. Being an AIM assistant, I'll echo what Barb said. I think being back here, having that atmosphere of people who are involved and who are ministering and serving, wherever it is, I think is just vital. And I think this atmosphere is great for that, whether it's an AIM assistant or just being around some people who understand where you've been and where you are, and that you can serve with is vital to that transition.
Okay. And this question, I'll just field it to all of you, and you can answer with a nod or a I disagree. But just knowing that your child coming back from the field, that they did struggle on the field, and that they go through reverse culture shock, and that's a really difficult time. And seeing your child go through that, would you say it was still worth it or not? You unanimously would say
Definitely worth it.
It was still worth it. Okay. Next question, we'll just work the mic this way, is what advice would you give parents who have children who are thinking about going through the AIM program or being involved in some form of mission work?
I've personally wondered about that because, my kids know how important AIM is to me. Being an instructor in AIM and, loving AIMers for as long as I've known about AIMers, I always struggled. I think maybe I even went too far, maybe not since they both are here, but I always wanted to be sure they didn't do AIM because of me, because it was so important to Dad, and Dad would be thrilled by that. And yet, knowing what I know, having Caitlin having gone through the experience and Reagan in it now, I think it's the greatest thing for so many levels. I think the knowledge and experience they gain here. I think the time on the field. There's just something about those first months out of the home, Bible teaching and around great people. Would you guys just say the singing's worth a lot? Just their time worshiping together is worth so much, and then they're learning and they're having ministry opportunities, and then they're thrown into another culture, and it's almost like you have growth on steroids because you have all this pumped into you, and then you have opportunities and challenges you have to face. And so I would encourage and foster that for anyone to really encourage it. I think it's a great experience.
I went through AIM, my wife went through AIM, my brother went through AIM, my sister-in-law went through AIM, and so we were an AIM-type family. And so they've heard about it all their lives growing up about AIM. But, at the end of the day, they had to make their own decision about what they were going to do. We obviously encouraged it. We encouraged mission work and working with orphans that we did. We encouraged them to reach out to people, and so we're obviously excited that they did that, and we think it's the best thing for them. We want to see them in ministry, and we want to see them in mission and doing those types of things, and so we raised them to think in that direction and to always have that type of mindset, and so just thankful to God that that's what they're doing.
I agree with them. I think parents encourage your children, but also if the only reason they are going is because you want them to, I really think that maybe you need to back off a little. This needs to be their decision because it's a big commitment. It's not just a couple months. you're looking at 2.5 year commitment, and it's a lot of hard work, not just the studies that you all are doing, but going to a foreign field if you go, or even if it's in the States and you're going to different part of the States than what you're used to. It's hard, and you have got to desire that, and so that's something I think parents need to encourage, but also don't be so pushing that it's your decision, not your child's decision.
I agree perfectly. I think you should encourage your children to follow their heart. And AIM is not for everyone, and everyone is not for AIM. But I think if your child wanted to go that direction, I just can't imagine as a Christian not encouraging them to have that experience. I had a preacher's wife come up to me when Bo was in England, and she said, "Don't you worry, something's going to happen to him." And I said, "He could be at LCU and step off the curb and a drunk driver hit him." I'd rather him be doing the Lord's work and following his heart than anything else. So I think you should encourage your children if this is what they want and share the experience with them. It's a wonderful program. I love it. I want to say one thing too. Young people at that age are at the most selfish age of their life. And when a young person at that age wants to do something for someone else and to study and have to raise the support and go and serve someone, I just think it's wonderful that young people at that age, instead of just thinking about themselves, they're doing something with their lives. And I think it's great.
I would just add one thing to that. I was so glad that Bo chose AIM, but I'm glad he wrote the letter on his own, and it's not like he did that just for us. And I would encourage any parents to begin early as they could to develop the mindset that they would want to serve the Lord in that way for a couple of years, so it would actually become their choice. And so I think that's very important.
My advice to parents, we just had a parent here last week with their 15-year-old son who's thinking about coming to AIM. And so my advice to him was, since it's a couple years away, to really encourage him to take advantage of as many service or mission type opportunities as possible. A lot of things can come along that might change his mind, but just to keep that fire going, as well as make sure he knows how to do laundry, and make sure he can cook, that he knows how to clean his apartment, and things like that. I mean, if he comes to AIM and he can cook, he's going to be, don't you guys kind of like hang around the people that can cook? You kind of drop into their apartment about dinner time, I mean, those kind of just skills like that are going to be valuable for him. And then I would just say for the parents themselves, they need to understand they're going to have to walk by faith, I think, just as much as their kid does, because there'll be things that will really challenge them as well.
Can't really add anything to that other than it's never too early to start to talk about not just AIM, but just if you notice a personality trait in your child that leans towards ministry, just jump on that and just encourage that.
I think one of the things that I like about AIM is just hearing feedback from parents and different things that have happened over the years is that a lot of times we'll look like, oh, my son's going into AIM or my daughter's going into AIM, so they're going to be missionaries for the rest of their lives and they're not going to go to college, or there's that worry of, well, I want them to be able to be self-sustaining and things like that. And one of the things that I love about AIM is it puts you in a place where you can decide. It's a 2-year period where you can decide, do I want to spend the rest of my life in this, or do I want to take the experience that I've gained and go into other things? And we've seen a lot of people, that have gone through AIM and they didn't continue to work as missionaries. But, I mean, my brother-in-law, he's the CFO of a bank. My sister-in-law's a speech pathologist, pharmacist, people working for Google, and things like that. But they still have that AIM experience that they had that brings a kingdom mindset into the work that they're doing. Even if they aren't working as professional missionaries, they still understand that concept that they are on mission in the occupation, wherever it is that they're working. And I think it all goes back just to that 2-year period that they gave when they were really young to mold them, and it makes better elders, deacons, Bible class teachers, doctors, lawyers, wherever they go. And so I thank you for giving your time this morning. I think it was really useful, and I think it'll be used as a tool as people begin to think about, well, do I want to do this, or do I want this for my child? It's just good to hear it from a perspective of a parent because you've been there. And notice that every parent, their kids had different experiences as they were on the field, but also as they came back. But it seems like just because of the parents that you are, your kids are doing well because you were investing in them. So I thank you for that. I'm going to close in a prayer, and we'll be dismissed for class. Father, I thank you for this time this morning. I thank you for the blessing to be able to sit down with these parents and just hear their perspective of what it was like when their child went through AIM. And Father, I pray that you'll be with any parents in here who have toddlers, just even now are begin thinking about, would this be a good avenue for our kids to enter into to be involved in lifelong mission? So, Father, we thank you. We give this day to you. I pray that you will be with everybody as they're studying for finals. And, Father, I just pray that that everybody finishes well. We give this day to you in the name of Jesus. Amen.